In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Lord, graciously give us your Holy Spirit. Guide us from within. Give us your light, your discernment. Incline our heart toward yours. And we ask you this through the powerful intercession of Our Lady, who is always present among us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, welcome everybody. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending when you will watch this video, to this 17th lesson in the third part of the course, which is second book of Ascent of Mount Carmel. Second book of Ascent of Mount Carmel, and we are starting today chapter 11, which is the beginning of the analysis that St. John of the Cross will present us, how he applies discernment, and this I think is very interesting. What you remember, all the previous chapters, he wanted to prove how faith is the only means to reaching union with God. And then the last chapter we just read, in this last chapter we just read, he presents the different communications, supernatural communications that one can receive from God, or otherwise, we will see. And now in this chapter 11, he will start to present one type of communication, of perception, if you want. You will see how he presents it. And I would like to call for your attention to see exactly how he works. It's, I think, what is interesting to watch and to sort of boil down, starting with this chapter, is the elements of discernment, how he uses them, and how he applies them. I think this is what really should interest us, to see how consider him a spiritual director or a master of spiritual life, how he will, and which principle he will use, but how he will apply his principles, how he will discern in such difficult cases. Because as you will see, the case will be, he will start with it of a vision or perception of feeling or sensing or smelling or something. And then the person might think, well, this is coming from God. So it is delicate, because the person who is at stake here is God himself. Is it coming from him, yes or no? So the issue is delicate because of the subject himself, God. Now, how then he will apply the discernment, this I think should retain our attention, because that's the key. That's the key, and therefore it will help us in our personal journey and personal life. And of course, if whoever is attending this course is called to one day, or is already doing it, called to help somebody spiritually, then he or she needs to see the tools of discernment, how what they are. I will try to underline them, and how they are applied. It's very interesting. And to see, of course, underneath all this or behind all this, constantly present, his understanding of what we call sometimes, at least in Rome, we had this faculty offering this area of specialization, supernatural anthropology, which is understanding the human being not just under the light of the light of reason, but also under the light of faith, and more so with a deeper light of faith, helped by the doctors and masters of spiritual life. Okay, so this anthropology, how he understands the working of the grace of God, how he sees the journey of the grace of God from God to us and from where it goes through, and how do we act or react, and how it can affect, and how growth is involved constantly in that. I think these are the elements that we should constantly keep in mind. What is happening, how the person reports it, and then how what are the elements of discernment, how he implements them, why, and then we will see together. Okay, so just forgive me for this initial introduction, because we are really starting the second part of this great second book of Ascent of Mount Carmel, which is the implementation of his discernment, case by case, point by point, of on all the different communications of God to us. So without further ado, allow me to share my screen so you can follow the text. We can follow all together the text. So, so we are here in the beginning of chapter 11. I hope you can see properly the text. So, chapter 11, of the hindrance and harm that may be caused by apprehensions of the mind, something that the mind perceives or receives. Apprehension means anything that, you know, he's using scholastic philosophy and theology. The translator sometimes uses it, sometimes uses modern expressions. So apprehensions in the sense that what the mind apprehends, which means what not apprehend in the usual meaning of it, but the modern recent one, but apprehend in the sense of reception, receiving. So, which proceeds from that which is supernaturally represented to the outward bodily senses. So we have something that is communicated to the bodily senses, as he will explain after. He will say it here. It could be sight, ears, smell, taste, or touch. So really, it's the bodily senses. But it's something that is communicated, like I can see something, or I can smell incense, you see, or I can feel with my hand or taste something, you see. So it is something that is supernatural, which means not the normal daily life communications that is given to us through the senses. So this is given to us, fine, but the effect of this on the mind, we want to see which attitude to have, how to react toward it, and so forth. So the hindrance and harm that may be caused, we will see if we behave in a certain way. If we behave in a different way, then it won't cause harm. Hence, then, the conclusion of this summary of the chapter, and how the soul, how the human being is to conduct itself therein. Okay, so it's really, as you can see the word here, conduct, or what to do, if you want, with it, how to deal with it. It's exactly the expression that you would use in a context of spiritual direction. It's like you come onto the spiritual director and you say, okay, well, this and this happened to me, and I don't know what to do. You see, I don't know what to do. Therefore, the person who is guiding us needs to know a little bit about it and have some understanding of it then, and of course discern and decide. It's better to do this and better or better to do that. You see? So it's typical, what I'm saying is that it's typical of spiritual direction, of discernment, the discernment of spiritual direction. Now, as you remember in the previous chapter, he gave us different types of knowledges or communications from God to us, corporeal, through the body, not directly to the soul, and so forth. So this is the first one. But what is interesting is that from the start, he implements his tools. He will apply the same tools or almost the same tools quite often. So we need to pay a lot of attention to this chapter because he's really laying the foundations, and therefore it will make a life easier for us after with the other chapters, because the logic is the same. He implements the same principles. Okay. So the first kind of knowledges whereof we have spoken in the preceding chapter, where he gave all the lists of knowledges or perceptions, we have spoken are those that belong to the mind and come through natural channels. Of course, we're talking about the mind. The entire book is about the mind, so there's nothing new here. But what is interesting here is that this supernatural communication, he will say it later on, comes through natural channels. You know, to see something, I saw something. I saw it. It was in front of me. You see, it's your eyes. Your eyes have a real perception that you saw something, or I did smell the smell of roses. I'm certain of it. It was overwhelming. Or I did smell some incense, no? Or I heard a beautiful music, but I looked around, nothing. You see, and so forth. You see, so this is what he's alluding to, and this happens. Any quote unquote spiritual person could have something about this, and I'm sure even if you haven't received any of those, or very little, you heard also around you, or you read around you about people who had these type of things. Of these, since we have treated them already in the first book, you remember, he invited us to leave all the pleasures and things that come to the senses and to seek the spiritual things, where we led the soul into the night of sense, no? Prefer Jesus above and the arduous things above the easier things, and so forth. We saw all this in the first book of the Ascent of Mount Carmel. We shall say not a word, for in that place we give suitable instruction for the soul concerning them. So the things that come to the sense directly, he says no. But now he will address the supernatural ones, the one that come maybe from God, or maybe we don't know, from the devil or whatever. So what we have to treat, therefore, in the present chapter will be solely those kinds of knowledge and those apprehensions which belong to the mind and come supernaturally, which means normally we don't have control over them. I didn't make this sort of smell of roses or smell of incense. I didn't make it happen. It just occurred. I don't have control over it. I can't trigger it by any means. I can't trigger it. You see, I might think that I can trigger it, but in the end of the day, I discovered that they are not. So we call them, they are supernaturally given. Supernatural means above nature capacity, or our normal capacity. But they come to us through outward bodily senses. That's clear. Namely by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Okay. So seeing could be a vision, Hearing could be a locution of some sort that I heard a voice. St. Augustine says, no, I heard a voice. It was a little child maybe playing there. I heard a voice, take and read. Take the book and read, and so forth. No, smelling, I mentioned, tasting, touching, and so forth. With respect to all these, there may come and there are wont to come to spiritual persons representations and objects of a supernatural kind. So he's talking about any representation or supernatural object that can be offered to us. With respect to sight, they are apt to picture, so vision, to see something with your eyes, with your naked eyes. They are apt to picture figures and forms of person belonging to the life to come, the forms of certain saints and representations of angels. I saw an angel. It happens, no? Even authentic visions or authentic apparitions, people see things. You really are in front of an angel, but it's a vision. Good and representations of angels, good and evil. It could be good angels, but also one can be frightened on an apparition of say, quote unquote, apparition of the devil, and certain lights and brightnesses of extraordinary kind. Well, I think you know enough about all this. You certainly read all sorts of apparitions or visions here and there. There are plenty around from centuries. And with their ears, they hear certain extraordinary words. Really, you hear, you have the audible locutions and you have the, physically audible, and you have inner locutions and so forth. So here he is talking about the audible one. It's like you heard it. You can't doubt that. Something spoken by those figures, like I saw an angel and he spoke to me, and therefore I heard him talking. So you have sight and ears and hearing. So those figures they see sometimes without seeing the person who speaks them. Sometimes you don't see anything and then you hear something. No, you hear somebody talking to you and then you look around and there's nothing. As to the sense of smell, they sometimes perceive the sweetest perfumes with the senses without knowing whence they proceed. I already mentioned that, no? Incense, roses, and so forth. Likewise, as to taste, it comes to pass that they are conscious of the sweetest savors, and as to touch, they experience great delight, sometimes to such a degree that it is as though all the bones and the marrow rejoice and sing, blossom in Spanish, and are bathed in delight. So imagine such an overwhelming sense of sweetness and spiritual unction. And this is like that which we call spiritual unction, which in pure souls proceed from the spirit and flows into the very members. Now, you see, he drops a little pearl here. He says, in pure souls, having achieved their purification, okay, maybe this is what he means. It proceeds from the spirit and flows through the soul until it reaches the members. The members. Members means the body. So does he come back to that later? He seems in the living flame and sometimes in the end of spiritual canticle to say that this does occur, that sometimes people who are then of course purified and united with the Lord and so forth, they do experience sometimes things in their body. Okay, but wait please for the time being. But you see how it works is that it proceeds from the spirit. And when he says the spirit, he's of course alluding to the human spirit, which is the first area in us that God comes across when he communicates his grace directly. Uncreated grace, the God, when he communicates with us, it's directly to the spirit. His very nature is communicated to our spirit. This is the capacity of the spirit. Our spirit is created and then step by step transformed and purified, but our spirit has this unique capacity to deal directly with God. I have explained that tons of times, but I just remind you. So here you see any grace, and this will be repeated after, but I take the opportunity to underline it here. For him, any grace that we receive goes through the spirit. In this sense, the spirit is nourished first. Is nourished and is nourished first, and is nourished according to a different way than in case something falls into the soul or to the body. Okay. And this sensible, so I close parenthesis because that's not what he wants to say right now. And this sensible sweetness is very ordinary thing which with spiritual persons, for it comes to them from their sensible affection and devotion. So a beginner, I'm rather inclined to now here to read it this way, not spiritual people like means purified, but spiritual people means, as he used it before, spiritual people who are the persons who abandoned the material and earthly goods and now are seeking spiritual God and spiritual things. So both together. So he says that ordinary, remember the milk, no? Ordinary spiritual persons, things will come from the spirit to the sensible affection and devotion, to a greater or a lesser degree, to each one after his own manner. Just wait, because that's not really it will be developed after. What is important is it comes after. And it must be known that although all these things may happen to the bodily senses in the way of God, it doesn't mean in the modality of God. In the way of God means comes from God, no? So even if it comes from God, be very careful here. Now he starts teaching. Even if it comes from God, we must never rely upon them or accept them, but must always fly from them without trying to ascertain whether they be good or evil. It's extremely tough decision, orientation, direction he's giving us. I felt, I smelled, I did smell something, or I saw something, etc. What shall I do? He says, do not rely upon it. Do not even accept it, which means don't go in this direction. Don't dwell into what you perceived. Not only that, you must fly from them, which means leave them where they are, you go elsewhere. You go elsewhere where? Remember, it will come after, but remember, he wants us to activate faith. And remember, the act of faith is made leaning upon God, not leaning upon anything that I sense. I lean on the grace of God in order to make the act of faith, in order to jump on this divine trampoline. The trampoline itself is the grace of God also. So I can't go toward God leaning on something that is not worthy of anything. And he considers that since it fell in the sense, or came, say, allegedly from God through the sense, any of the five senses, its value and its function are not really important, because of the fact that the sense and faith are not directly helping each other. Faith goes in a direction, the sense go in another, the opposite direction. So if I follow whatever I felt, I'm going away from the faith, from the act of faith, from the immersion of faith, from the abyss of faith. You see? So I'm trying to explain the reason, and he will develop it, of course. We are leaning on what he says. I'm not adding anything to his teaching. I wouldn't do that. You see? So I'm just trying to explain to you what he's saying. So, and the fourth advice, don't even try to know if it came from God or the devil. Some people will spend time and say, okay, let us come and discern, not discern. Is it coming from God? And did it give you a sense of peace? Did it give you a sense of humility? Did it give you a sense of detachment, and so forth? So we are trying to know, is it coming from God or not? The answer is, shockingly, abrupt, bold rejection. Don't go there. It's like, well, then what then? Why did I receive it then? Don't go there. And he will explain, don't worry. It's not just free assertion. He will develop and explain why. Okay? So please remember, right from the beginning, paragraph 2, he's giving us this direction. Never rely upon them. Rely, let me develop. Rely means in order to go to God, do not rely on them. This is what it means. Because what is his purpose? His purpose is to guide us toward God. Right from now, not tomorrow, not within 2 years. No, from now, he wants us to use faith properly in order to access God, because he deeply believed that God can be accessed right from now. I don't need to wait until I'll be united to God. I can still access God from now. Certainly not with total purity, certainly not with the fullness, certainly not in the same way, but still I can access God from now. But to access God from now, it's the act of faith, and the act of faith goes in the opposite direction. God is deep in me, while whatever I'm feeling is out in the outer layers of my being. You see, this is why he say, do not rely on them in order to go to God. You rely on faith, and faith is given, is a grace, and the act of faith itself leans on God himself, who reveals, God himself who speaks, God himself who says the truth, not on anything that I felt. You see? So don't rely on them in order to go to God. Don't accept them in the sense of, this is food for me. This is means for me to go to God. This is useful. No. Strangely, he says no. And he will explain why. Don't worry. He will say, because it already, if it came from God, if it is from God, it already acted and gave its, I mean, the communication already happened to the spirit, so you can't stop it. So if it comes from God, don't worry, it already had its effect. You don't need to do something in order to get the effect. You don't need to receive it in order to get the effect. You see the point? That's very interesting. He will develop that. I'm anticipating. So don't accept them, because accepting them will offer then something more. You already received the grace in the spirit, but accepting them is engaging you in a journey that is taking you away from God. So you see, accept, rely and accept are dragging me outside through the external senses toward what is happening, despite the fact that you might think that this comes from God, despite the fact that it is supernatural. But it's not enough for him. It's not enough for him that something moved. I don't know. You heard something, you smelled something, you saw something. It doesn't strengthen your faith. It doesn't help. And if it was from God, and if it is from God, it already gave its effect. But you receive the constant grace to make an act of faith, and the act of faith goes in the other direction. Okay? This is why then he says, we need to go to the other direction, which is you must always fly from them, which means go to God. 180 degree opposite direction. You see what he's trying to say? Because the senses are outside, you know. Imagine the human being as different circles, and God is at the center of this circle, and the senses are outside. So if they are triggered by something, and I'm paying attention, I'm going outside. Let me draw it. It will help. I'm sure you can see what I'm saying. You can visualize it, but you know, a little bit of drawing will just strengthen your perception. Okay, just give me a second here. I will put the thing here on. If you want to, well, I think it would be too early if you want to talk or comment, because it's sorry, I'm trying to open the thing. So let me share just for 2 seconds. So now you will be hopefully seeing, yeah, you can see the, so imagine now, just to help you understand. So imagine this is the human, this is God in the center of the human being. And then you have different layers. Say you have the spirit layer. I will consider, I draw it as layers. So just accept the simplification. Our spirit, then other layers here, if you want, the soul, and then the sense. So this would be here the soul, and this would be here the senses. Okay, so if anything happens to the senses, is given to the senses, it's not given elsewhere. No, if it's given to the senses, it's perceived by the senses, not perceived by the spirit. You see the difficulty for the beginner to discern. The beginner will say something happened outside, which, let me just put it here in, will this work? Yeah, something happened here, you see. He says if it comes from God, he already acted deep in the human being here, in the area of the spirit. Or if you prefer, in this area here, God acted in the sense that he communicated himself here to the spirit. God communicated himself to the spirit, but the spirit by definition is above consciousness, so you don't perceive it. The only thing you perceive is what happened to the senses, and since it is supernatural, it hits you in a stronger way, because you say, oh, that's amazing, I smelled this smell of rose, and I don't know what to do. Oh, this incense, smell of incense, and I didn't expect that. What does it mean? And so forth. So where are you now? You are here. And if it really came from God, it already communicated its specific grace. but we are weak. So what happens? Our attention is drawn toward the senses. So we are leaving. Instead of dwelling closer to God, you see my mouse here, instead of dwelling here closer to God, no, this dot in the middle is God himself. Just after it is the spirit, just after it the soul, just after it the sense. Or you can put the emotions between the end here of soul closer to the sense. You can put the emotions if you want. Okay. So it's normal that our attention then will be put here in this area. You see. So this is why he says, don't pay attention, because you will go out instead of going in. The act of faith in his eyes is a movement from the soul to God. You see this darker green arrow. This is the act of faith for him. The attention I'm giving to this alleged supernatural manifestation goes this way. Do you see the arrow here? It goes from outside to inside. Sorry, from inside to the sense. Do you see this sort of black and purple color? No. These are two opposite directions. The act of faith is this green arrow here. I am drawn toward God. I am throwing myself in the abyss of God himself. That's the act of faith. I'm leaning on God in order to reach him. So not on anything perceived. While the act of paying attention to what I received is bringing me outside, taking me to the outer layer of my being. So it's the opposite direction of faith. You see, is it clear? I think it's clear. It doesn't really. Hence, then the bold advice he's giving us not to pay attention, and then not only that, but to fly from them. No, as you can see here, you must always fly from them. Why? Because the mechanism is dragging you out instead of dragging you in. Of course, we are very good in creating excuses. No, yeah, but you know, it's devotion, etc. Yeah, but your devotion now is going outward. You're not leaning on faith. You're not activating faith. That's for him the key point. And the crown of all this is, don't try to ascertain either if they are good or evil, which sometimes you find people, spiritual directors, who would spend hours and hours just to try to ascertain. It's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of depth. It's not really directing or guiding or accompanying people toward the act of faith. You see, and then you enter in causes and effects. It's like, why he gave it to me, what did it mean, and try then to spend some time on why and how. While everything is given already, his presence in me is there. Accessing him is possible. Accessing him through faith is possible. So why am I losing time with other things that are not essential? You see the discernment between the essential, what is given, accessible, and all the noise around it. So let us continue. For the more completely exterior and corporeal they are, physical, material, you can sense them, the less certainly are they from God. That's tough, rough and tough. But he will explain. He won't leave us with just a truth thrown like this. For it is more proper and habitual to God to communicate himself to the spirit. Proper and habitual. So this circle close to God, this is where God communicates to himself, communicates himself to us. Is it perceived? Answer is no. It is in faith, which means not perceived but real. Not perceived but real. The communication of God to our spirit is real. When you receive communion, it is real. You received God. Have you felt it? Have you sensed something? No. But you did receive the very nature of God. The roots of your being, i.e., your spirit, have been nourished by God. It is accessible. Communion is given every day, while visions are not given every day. Thank God. It would be a mess. You see? So it is much more certain to receive communion in faith because you are receiving God himself. This is me talking, of course, but I'm trying to go with this reasoning. While this is what he's saying, no? So it's more proper and habitual to God to communicate himself to the spirit, wherein there is more security and profit for the soul. Of course, because you're not reducing God to something that you feel or sense or understand. The spirit is much wider than all this, and God is beyond all this. God is uncreated. So it's much more secure to receive God in faith and profit. You profit much more. He will explain that in the other chapters, in the following chapters. Okay. So it is. There is more security and profit for the soul than to sense, wherein there is ordinarily much danger and deception. It's dangerous. Why? Because you are placed outside of yourself. You are going further from God. So if you start to want to see, oh, I saw the icon there, the eyes of Jesus blinked. Or I saw the mouth of Our Lady and I had the impression that she is smiling to me. Oh, how wonderful. Fine, okay, this happens to plenty of people. Maybe it happened to you. That's fine. But be careful. Prayer of the heart is not watching an icon and waiting for it to blink or to smile or to have the impression that Jesus is sad. You know, oh, I have the impression, don't you see that here on the picture that Jesus is a little bit sad? Don't you see in this thing there that there's a sign there in the sky, you see the clouds, etc. No? What is this? Less security and less profit. We are losing time and energy instead of using the opened way for us that allow us to access God right now. Right now, you are listening or watching this video, you can make an act of faith. Nobody can stop you. You don't need a vision for that. You see? God is accessible. You can pray while we are reading St. John of the Cross. You can pray. Nobody can stop you. God is accessible, really accessible. He communicates himself. The act of faith gives God, says St. John of the Cross. The act of faith right now, you can make it. Communicates God to you, gives you God. You don't feel him, but he's communicated to our spirit. So it is secure with greater profit. And you see the profit and the effects on the long run. So, wherein it is more security and profit for the soul than to the sense wherein there is ordinarily much danger and deception. Of course, deception. And then the devil will start to play, and he will say it. It's a nice chapter because he really covers the subject. For bodily senses. For bodily sense, judges and makes its estimate of spiritual things by thinking that they are as it feels them. Which means if you feel something, you consider that this is God. If you hear something, you say, this is God. Is like equality, no? It's equal to God, while it's not. So this is what he's saying. The bodily sense evaluates, judges according to what the bodily sense is. And the bodily sense is what? His sense. It's material. So it's as if you are saying God is material. Well, God is not material. God is spirit. Yeah. Jesus says, no, God is spirit. If you want to worship God, you need to worship God in spirit and in truth. So this is what he's saying. Whereas they are as different as is the body from the soul, and sensuality from reason. Well, for us, maybe it's difficult. Maybe you haven't studied proper psychology as it is taught. You know, rational psychology given to in his time, Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, and so forth. So, in his understanding, and of course he's right, but we're not used to think this way. Body and soul are very different. The body, you can see the body, it's senses, and but soul is invisible. Sensuality from reason, the big distance, reason and sensuality. So he says it's an image, of course, it's a comparison, it's a weak comparison, but it's still a comparison. He says it's like a completely different level. So how can reason or sensuality judge something that belongs to reason? It's not possible. It might be difficult for you to understand, but philosophically it's sharp and tight. For the bodily sense is as ignorant of spiritual things as is a beast of rational things. A beast, an animal, is ignorant of rational things. No, yeah, we could talk to our dogs. Yeah, of course we talk. We talk to the dog. No, and we sort of understand what the dog is saying, etc. But in fact, it's all in our mind. No, the dog cannot understand. If a cat looks at a mirror, the cat jumps in the beginning because the cat thinks that it's him. No, it's somebody else. Sorry, not him. So reflection. The fact that they sense and feel things and appreciate things, it makes us fall into the illusion that they have the same way of understanding things and they're rational like us, but they're not. They have excellent ways. They are very advanced compared to other, I don't know, vegetation or water or other things, but it's still different. So the bodily sense is as ignorant of spiritual things as is an animal from rational things. And even more so, of course, much more so, because spiritual things are much more elevated. So he that esteems, the person who esteems such things, which means hold them dear, as greatly, goes astray greatly, and exposes himself to great peril of being deceived. Because we're opening here a Pandora box, if you want, and we will not be able to discern anything. Not only that, but we will give the opportunity to the devil then to come and play with us like a cat plays with the mouse. In any case, he will have within himself a complete impediment to the attainment of spirituality. This is sometimes when you wish people would listen. Huh? If you go this way, you know, how many times people know, oh, this happened and that happened, this vision, and I saw this and I saw that, and this person heard, and we went this, and we went and these apparitions, we went there, and the visionary said this, and the vision said that. Okay, fine. Complete impediment to the attainment of spirituality. So we stay going in circles, and we also deceived with good intentions, thinking we're doing well, but we're going astray, according to St. John of the Cross. And he explains why. He explains why. Why is it a complete impediment? Because if I esteem something that is on the outer layers of my being, I will be there and I will judge things according to the sense. As simple as that. And this has nothing to do with exercising myself with the act of faith. So faith here is diminishing, and mixed with impurities. And my spiritual being is weakened. Okay. For as we have said, between spiritual things and all these bodily things, there exists no kind of proportion whatever. There's no proportion. So I'm really dwelling into things that I saw or smelled or touched and so forth, and I'm staying there and I'm really going astray. There's no proportion between God, who dwells inside of me, and these things that I'm feeling or sensing. And thus it may always be supposed that such things as these are more likely to be of the devil than of God. More likely, in general. He's not saying that's the final say, but he says it's more likely. Why? Let us think why. Because they are dragging us away from God. They're carrying us away. They are attracting our attention to something that is exterior. So who benefits from that? Who benefits from us not doing the act of faith, from not accessing God, from not growing spiritually, from not receiving God and being transformed and purified by God? Who benefits from all that? The one who dwells in these areas, the outer layers, the devil, a type of category of devils, because certainly there are more refined and sophisticated types of devils. You see? So, and here comes the devil. For the devil has more influence in that which is exterior and corporeal. God gives him more freedom to trick us, or to delude us, or to drag us astray from God Himself in the outer areas. Of course, the devil will continue to a certain extent, to a certain degree, but then after that, no. St. John of the Cross has the audacity to say that whenever the soul is united with God, this area itself of this union, say the connection between our spirit and God, the devil has no access there, has no access to this area. Very interesting, coming from him. We can learn a lot from him. So, the devil has more influence. God allows that because we are treating physical things as if they were God Himself, or we think that they come from God. But then you see, it's like what I said. No, try to see if Our Lady is blinking, or how she looks, etc., etc. What is this? But still, we do it. So the devil has more influence in that which is exterior or corporeal, and can deceive a soul. He has the permission more easily thereby than by what which is more interior and spiritual. It doesn't mean that what is interior and spiritual, there is no temptation from the devil. Yes, because there are still more layers until we reach the layer beyond these layers. So you still have some temptation. So for this reason, he has this sort of opinion, more likely to be of the devil than of God. He's not saying that's no, it's always coming from the devil. No, but he says that why would God give that? You see the reasoning. Why would God give that if God is inside? Why would he give something outside while he is inside? He's not supporting the act of faith in this case. So is it really from God? And so forth. You had yeah, please grab your mic.
Yeah, the church has accepted some visions, no? Like in Lourdes or in... So why do they accept these visions if they're not helping our act of faith? Is that because people need strengthening from time to time, or is it because it was certainly from God and God had a direct message for us? What?
Well, let us just...
Because if this is the truth, then that we shouldn't pay any attention to any visions in a way.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yet the church has said that we can pay plenty of attention to the vision of Mary to Lourdes.
No. The church is not... When the church approves or pays attention to any apparition, the church is not in the same time saying, I support you seeing things. No. Each apparition has a meaning, has a context, and has a content, and this is on which the church has a say. Often the church doesn't judge the quality of the vision or the type of the vision. The church is rather inclined to, for instance, evaluate a message. Of course, you will say, but a message is also something that is audible. I'm with you. I'm with you. But when the church approves, it doesn't mean that the church says, we like this way of communication. No, that's not at all the church's message. Not only that, but the church says, my approval of any apparition is not an essential part of faith. You are not forced. I cannot force you to adhere to it because it's not core. It's marginal. The church invites us to go to believe in it not in a forceful way, or not. It's not mandatory to believe.
Okay.
So that's very important. And if I go to a place, say for instance, I'm thinking of Lourdes or Fatima, the most popular ones, but there are plenty of others. If you go there, it doesn't mean that you are expecting to see. It's very beautiful in Lourdes. You have a little plaque where it's written, I came blind and I came back seeing through faith. I stayed blind. He wasn't healed, but he got faith. He came back with faith. So it's not about seeing, if it's about going to pray, it's about answering the message of Our Lady. So the approval of the church involves all this.
Okay.
It doesn't involve the method itself or the fact of a vision. Number two, the vision itself fades in the mind of the visionary. If you study, for instance, the life of Bernadette, you will notice that after a while, she becomes a nun, and then after a while, she starts to doubt her visions. After she gave witness and after everything. Why? I think this is good. Why? Because then you do not rely on something that came not from God, who is deep inside of me, whom I can access through faith, but it came from, she saw Our Lady, where the statue is right now in the grotto. You can see the statue there where she saw her. Of course, what she saw is something that has nothing to do with the statue itself. So it was physical, it was there. They passed things, they put fire on her hands, etc. They tried to test her, you see, in different ways. So she saw physically, but then she's much later in her life, when she was a nun, she doubted sometimes. She had doubts. Did I really trick people? Did I lie? Did I really see Our Lady? And I think that this is very good, in the sense that all of us can, including Bernadette, have to take the journey of faith and not the journey of vision. The journey of vision doesn't help.
Okay.
You see what I don't know if I answered.
No, you did. Yeah.
Your question. Okay. I think we should stop, unfortunately. Time is flying. So where did we stop? We said, and thus it may well suppose that more likely devil
just
than
at
God.
4.
For the devil has more influence.
No, number 4.
Oh, yeah. So we stopped here, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we leave number 4 for next lesson, God willing. And as you see, it's really unexpected way of dealing with things. And you can understand the weakness of the human being, bouncing on what you said, how many times you hear people without mentioning any specific aberrations, but you can very easily think of especially one. more famous and more recent, people, I'm not saying people haven't received graces or will not receive graces when they go there, but you can understand very easily the temptation for people to stick to this sort of information that comes from outside. Visions, apparitions. In Fatima, the sun moved. At Medjugorje, some people saw the sun moving or whatever, and so forth. It could help maybe a little bit, like a little push in the beginning of the life of a person who is changing. Okay, fine. But to continue after that for years and years and years, to pay attention to these type of things, as sometimes does happen, I find it deeply disturbing, especially under the light of the advice given by St. John of the Cross. It is human weakness to seek signs and consolations and visions and confirmation from here, from there, while the teaching of John of the Cross bears an amazing, beautiful message. God is there. He loves you. He wants to give himself to you. You can receive him. Please, I beg you, use and learn to make an act of faith. Use faith. It's given to you. It's given to you. And if you feel you don't have it, ask for it. Please, God, graciously give me a stronger faith. But then the act of faith gives you infinitely much more than any vision of any apparition that happened, because it gives you God, while the apparition gives you a fragmented element. You will say, but we are weak and we need it because it comforts us and supports us. Open the Bible also. It might be good for the beginner, for the very, very beginner. That's fine. That's the milk. That's fine. But then to stay at this level for the rest of our life, it is deeply disturbing. And the same applies also, for instance, in the charismatic renewal. You have plenty of beautiful things, and God speaks through the signs and through outer elements and so forth. Fine, it's good. It's good for the beginner. But to spend my entire life going around this area, you see in the drawing that I made, which is the outer layer, to stay for the rest of their life in the outer layer. I'm exaggerating maybe for some people, but some people really stay there, and they say we are weak, we are human, we need to sense, we need to feel. Why do you think that faith doesn't help you progress? Why do you think that the act of faith is not transforming you? Why do you think, as he said a few lines above, that for people who are purified, there is something that nobody can describe? So you are missing something if you stay outside, because you will not get what is inside, and what is inside is bringing to you. You see what he's trying to say? He says there is a treasure. I'm not depriving you, I'm offering you better. So please accept to make the act of faith, and in doing so, of course, you renounce to paying attention to whatever is outside. I think this is his message. John of the Cross is sometimes looks very abrupt when you read him. Sometimes he's like, boom, that's it. But you need to understand what is behind that. What is behind that is his deep perception and knowledge that this act of detachment that he's asking us to make for this or that thing that is attracting us wrongly, he is saying there is a recompense, or there is a price, or there is a result that you can't imagine. So this is why he is so sharply tough and rough. It's because he knows that God is waiting to give us infinitely much more, and he doesn't want us to deprive ourselves by just being like few bees flying around something that is not really interesting. You see, so it's important to keep in mind that if you perceive John of the Cross as being too radical or too like almost sometimes, God knows, no, unhuman, no, it's like too tough. You need to know that he is motivated by what God is wants to give us, which is something that is beyond description. You can have a look at the spiritual canticle and the living flame and see this is what he wants us to achieve. This is why you have this beautiful prayer that he has, where he invites us to leave all this and to seek God himself. Maybe I will find this prayer for the coming lessons. Okay, so thank you, Lord, for this teaching, unexpected teaching, maybe for some, but it's there and it is explained by him. Thank you, Lord, for this teaching, and glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much.